Carole Montgomery, welcome to Youngstown Studio. I wanted to give our listeners and viewers a little glimpse into who Carole Montgomery is. So why don't you
Well,
share
you
with
can.
us where you came from?
Yes, I am originally from Brooklyn, New York. I lived there most of my life, and then I moved to New York City. And then I want to say my mid 20s, I moved out to Los Angeles, and then I got a gig in Las Vegas. So I was there for 10 years, and then I came back home to New York. So that's where I am now.
And now, will this be your first trip to the Robbins Theater here in Ohio, or been here before?
No, I haven't. I have not been there. I've played Ohio many times, but mostly Cleveland, and so it'll be fun. I'm like really looking forward to coming into that area because it's an area I have not been in yet.
All right, and comedy is kind of hitting a new trajectory here, and I love that there's so many more people involved. So, how long ago did you get involved in comedy?
Well, probably before you were born, young man.
Okay, all right,
I started comedy in 1979.
okay.
So I actually started with I started with a young man in Brooklyn, New York, in Sheepshead Bay at a club called Pips. A young man called Andrew Silverstein, who ends up becoming Andrew Dice Clay.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, I started with a lot of with Paul Reiser, Seinfeld, Bill Maher. We were all in the comedy what trenches together.
Okay. Now, why don't you tell us about your style? What's your flavor of comedy?
Well, what's interesting is that's a great question, actually. But what's so interesting is that back when I started, I was considered very dirty, like really, like, oh, Carole, she's a dirty girl. And compared to what other comics are doing now, I'm like a nun. So, but basically, I'm a truth teller. I grew up in Brooklyn, so there will be the F word there because that's in Brooklyn that's an adjective for us. But I talk about my life. When I started, I was in my 20s. I was single. That's what my jokes were about. And then I met my husband, and that's what my jokes were about. Then I had the kid. That's what I talk about my life. I talk about my family. And now the show is Funny Women of a Certain Age. It's all women over the age of 50. So a lot of discussion is about being older.
And tell us about the people who will be joining you. So you got three acts here. Who's opening? Tell me how that is.
So basically, very quickly, Funny Women of a Certain Age is a comedy show, like I said, featuring female headliners over the age of 50. We have a rotating cast. I when I do the big theaters like the Robbins theaters, I like to take women that were in the specials. We had three specials running on Showtime, and the first special was the highest rated special for Showtime in comedy in 2019. So I plucked Vanessa Hollingshead. She was on the first special, and then we had two more funny women of a certain age, and even more funny women of a certain age. And the third special, that one was we had Marsha Warfield, and so she's coming and joining us. So there's no, we're all, I call it's an all headliner show, but most likely I do most of the hosting. Then Vanessa will come out, and then Marsha, of course, will close it. And I'm not sure if your audience is aware of who Marsha Warfield is, but if you were a fan of the TV show Night Court, she played Roz the bailiff the entire season. And now with the new Night Court, she's actually She's going to have a recurring role in it. But the reason I love Marsha, she's a legend. I mean, she is a legend in comedy. But the reason why, like, I'm so excited because like, as a lovely woman, hysterical. But there was a show called Richard Pryor had a show for like a minute. It was called the Richard Pryor Show, and she was one of the writers on the show with Richard. So to me, that's like comedy royalty on top of comedy royalty. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So you being in comedy for a long period of time, and we're sort of in a very weird state where there's some things you can talk about, some things you can't talk about, and I assume you're on the edgy side of things. So
Yes.
are you threading the needle on some of these topics, or are you just balls out on it?
You know what? I've never been one to listen to the trends. I just talk about what I talk about. I don't like to talk about politics because half of the audience is going to be upset regardless of what side you are on. So my goal is to just have make people, have a good time. The world is in such turmoil right now, and people need to go out and laugh. So
Heck
so
yeah.
my attitude is come in, you're going to have a good time because, and also all three of us, this is one of the things I'm proudest about, as a woman in comedy. We would always get, women are all they're all gonna talk about the same thing, their time of the month or their moms, or and it's like, you know what, every single one of us is different. We may touch on similar subjects, but I always choose a variety of women that work well together because I want people to have a good time. So I always say, if you don't like one of us, you're gonna like all of, you'll like somebody. But the show is so important, I think, because the market that we're marketing, of course, is the over 50. That's the most underserved demographic, and for some reason, people, the networks, live shows, they don't think old people want to go out, and we do. I mean, we can't stay out till midnight, and but but you know what I mean. Like this is such a, and also, just so you know, this isn't just for older people. When we taped the first two specials, we taped them in Brooklyn, New York. Hipster heaven. Half of the audience were millennials. So it's a show for everybody. But we are branching out and trying to say to the older people, come out, have a good time, leave your walker at home. You'll have fun.
So one of my favorite questions to ask comedians who come through here, and I want your opinion on this, and this is from a comedian's perspective, the phenomenon with crowd work as being so instrumental in some people's shows. How do you feel about it?
Well, very good questions, by the way.
Thank you.
What you see, the problem I have, I do crowd work. Of course I do. I mean, every comic does crowd work. But the problem with the phenomenon now is because somebody or something went viral with crowd work. So now comedians, as great and as imaginative as we are, when it comes to furthering our career, we're very non-imaginative. So now, right now, everybody's doing crowd work. So, well, then I have to post videos about crowd work, and it's like, guys, why don't you just be yourself? And like it's so funny you mentioned this because everyone. I was talking to some comics last night. I was doing a show in Brooklyn, and they were talking about Matt Rife, and and some people had good things to say, some people had bad things to say, and they were all like, well, he's just doing crowd work. He went. I said, first of all, he worked very hard on that, so I don't discredit him at all. But he found the niche. Like I describe Matt Rife as the Dane Cook of my generation because Dane Cook became a superstar. He was the first social media star. He figured out MySpace. And then every comedian in the world went, well, if Dane Cook did it, I must go on MySpace. So when it comes to actually furthering careers, comics are not very, they're not, they don't think outside the box. I've always done crowd work. Sometimes I post videos about crowd work. Sometimes I just post a rant that I'm doing, or sometimes I just actually, I know this is shocking. I actually post a joke. You know what I mean?
Joke.
Like, but you know what I mean? Like it's quite interesting because, and whatever the next thing is, because like I said, with Matt, he went viral on TikTok. They went viral on MySpace. There is going to be something else that, whatever it is the hot thing for comics to do. And then every one of them, including myself probably, will go that way. And I in our defense, I will say this. I was talking to somebody in the industry, very high up in the industry. We were having a discussion about this, because I've been doing stand-up for 40 years. I really do. I sound like a grizzled old veteran because I was saying to her, I said, in my day, all you had to do was be funny. You didn't have to edit and videotape and make sure you're doing these. You just had to be funny. But there will be something else in the next few years that's going to be the hot new thing, and that's what everyone will do.
Yeah, and my phone, when I scroll down through my reels, it's all comedians, it's all material. And I get introduced to so many comedians that I never even knew existed because of that. But it's got to be a double-edged sword. Once your stuff kind of makes it into that realm, do you have to over prepare material because so much of it makes it in a way for public consumption without being at a show?
Well, yeah. Well, what's so great? Once again, great question. what's so interesting to me is back in the day, and here I am going back in the day, when they were just when we just walked to school. But back in the day, like you didn't want to burn up your material. This is like a whole new phenomenon for me because, like, if you did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and you did that 5 minutes, you could never do that material again. It was burnt. But now you see comics and they're giving up so much material for free. And I understand it's because the goal is, of course, like, especially on YouTube. I know you can actually make money on YouTube if you get a certain amount of views, but you're giving up all this material. And when I was talking to my friend, this person who was in the industry, she said, unfortunately, that's what's happening now. You have to, the big thing is content. Do you have content? What kind of
Right.
content do you have? I'm like, I don't have any content. I'm tired. That's my content. I'm so tired.
Do you find it's easier now, though, to make a living in comedy? Do you think it's harder now, or do you think it's harder then?
You know what? That's also a double-edged sword, because back in the day, you followed a certain routine. Basically the routine was, um, uh, you did your 5 minutes. You grew your act in the New York City clubs. Then when you had about 15 minutes, you'd go out and do one-nighters and be an opening act. Then you'd move into the middle act. Then you'd move into the closing act. But first of all, nobody get you like we. I was really lucky because you'll hear comics like myself talk about the fact of the golden days of the late '80s and early '90s. We were making bank. Opening acts were making money. They could make a living at it. I think it's gotten worse for regular, ordinary comics who are just trying to make a living and move on and get stronger. I think it's way harder to do that now.
Now, any interesting stories from the road doing comedy, performing live?
Well, I don't know if I can say. Well, I'll tell you the story, and then you can cut it if you have to.
All right.
The thing about back in the day, now you got to understand, there's no phones, there's no internet, everything. The thing you had to be careful at, especially as a woman, is whenever I go on the road, I would always unpack my stuff. But you had to be careful because, like, usually the first or second drawer there was a bunch of porno magazines,
Mhm.
and you had to make sure when you took them out because they were kind of sticky.
Oh.
So you had to kind of like, all right, you know what? I'm going to let them stay there. I'll use the third drawer. But like stuff like that, like I've always had, like I'm a very lucky woman in comedy because thank goodness nobody ever messed with me because there's plenty of women that have had horror stories happen to me. I think it was because I'm not one to mess with. Let's just say that. Being from Brooklyn, so so I was always very lucky. But no offense to the men who are listening to this, you're not very clean.
Yeah.
And when you're on the road with other guys and and you're sharing a bathroom, it's like, I mean, I'm dealing with this at home with my son and my husband. Could you maybe hit the bowl? Is it possible
Uh,
that can you do you know what I mean? Can you maybe put the toilet seat down so, like, if I go in the middle of the night, I don't fall into the toilet bowl? But stuff like that. You get used to it.
all right, so let's go back to the show. This is coming up January 20th at Robbins Theater. What time is
Right.
that show?
I want to say 8 o'clock, but it may be 7 o'clock. I apologize for that. We've been changing. We've been changing shows. We've been changing times on a bunch of different shows because actually, I was talking about the fact that we're older. Like I'm doing a bunch of shows. I'm doing a bunch of matinees in Florida, of course, because women, we don't go out. But yeah, January 20th. I'm checking it right now. If you give me a second, I will find out exactly
Absolutely.
what
And picking
what
January to visit Ohio to do a comedy show. The weather is beautiful here in January. I can't wait till you get here.
I am so looking forward to day. I'm going to take out my bikini and
Sure.
okay. The show is at doors open at 7, so the show is at 8 o'clock. Yeah, no, like I said, I've played Ohio a lot, and I've done many gigs in the middle of winter. And you know what? Here, this is why you should come out because it's probably going to be a blizzard sometime during that time. And that's the best shows. I've done so many shows where like you go, oh, there's nobody going to be there. The weather is terrible. And then you end up, that's the night that everyone goes out because they're like, you know what? We've been stuck in the house for a week with nothing. Let's go out. So I'm looking forward to the snow. She says, not really, but no, go ahead.
We're buying it. I'm buying what you're selling.
Hey, there
the
we
the,
go.
the theater is beautiful. January 20th, 7 o'clock. We have Carole Montgomery coming to the Robbins Theater. Any other words before we close out?
Just when I talk about the show, I take myself out of it, and I know that when I talk about it, I sound cocky, but it's really because I'm so proud of what I've done for older women in general. Because ageism does exist. Ageism and sexism. I like to say we're fighting ageism and sexism one joke at a time. And if I could choose as a 65-year-old woman between ageism or sexism, I would take up a hat on the ass because it meant somebody noticed me.
Nice. Well, Carole Montgomery, thank you so much. Make sure you check out her show. There's tickets available at the Robbins Theater website, so get those tickets. Again, January 20th, 7 o'clock. Thank you, Carole.
Thank you, Joe. And please, Joe, if you want to come, let me know. I'll put you on the guest list.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.